and I was associated with Go Sports at a time of a deep valley. But I'm happy to say that at the bottom of that valley came a individual that has brought us to great heights. And that's Jason Siegel, our presenter today. I truly believe Jason's one of two individuals in Central Florida that is the captain or captains of sports tourism. And he has reorganized Go Sports to be a viable organization for sports tourism, sports marketing. I'm very proud that Jason accepted that role. I'm very proud that Jason has been working 24/7 with his team to advance our sports tourism. And I'm very proud of the fact that Jason serves very enthusiastically on our CFHLA board of directors. In fact, I think he does that to continue to recruit CFHLA board members to his Go Sports board. We are so lucky today that Jason's sliced some time in his schedule to give everybody a Central Florida sports tourism update. I want to say to all of you, although we only have 70 on the line now, we are anticipating 100. What we're going to do in terms of format is permit Jason to give his presentation, and at the conclusion of his presentation, we will go into Q&A if you want to use the chat room. So I know that we have already had a couple pre-questions, and Aaron Walsh of our fine CFHLA staff will serve as the moderator for the Q&A. With that said, let me officially introduce our very own Go Sports individual superstar, Jason Siegel. Jason?
Rich, I really appreciate the comments, and thank you so much for not only the guidance and support over the years, but your influence in our community as it relates to so many of the objectives that we're trying to reach at the Greater Orlando Sports Commission. I appreciate you bringing up our recruiting strategies. I think we've got the law firm of Martinez, McGavin, and Mueller represented on our board as representatives of our great hotel community, and so many others as our board has grown to, remarkably, it's grown to 62 individuals over the past number of years. So we're proud of the not only the relationships that we've built within the community, but certainly the mission that we have to serve our community and drive economic impact and market our destination in the best way that we know and can in such a collaborative environment. If you would permit me, I'd love to share my screen. I've got a presentation ready to share with you all. Let's do this. All right. What I wanted to do is just give a brief overview of where we stand as an organization going into this period of COVID, and then certainly address the new realities of the market conditions that we're dealing with right now. Very simply, our organization established in 1993. We've hosted over 1,400 events and $1.78 billion of economic impact over that time. The organization, as many of you remember, was created to host World Cup back in 1994, which we successfully did. It's still, that World Cup is still the largest attended World Cup in their history. So they had a tremendous response and experience while they were here in the United States back in 1994. Our mission, of course, to strategically solicit, create, and support sports-related events and businesses that boost our community's economy and drive awareness of our destination. And wanted to share with the group, this is our map, the footprint of the number of entities that we serve. Of course, Lake Seminole, Orange, Osceola, the city of Orlando, and of course we receive funding from the state as well through the Florida Sports Foundation. Also wanted to share with you a list of the venues that we work on behalf of and that we work with to bring events here to Orlando. So just a little bit of a list there. These are the majority of the groups that we work with the majority of the time. Obviously, there's some smaller venues and ballparks that on occasion we will work in partnership with. From a strategic planning standpoint, it's our role to evaluate, bid, create, and advocate on behalf of our community. And we are more than proud to do that in 5 general categories. The newest one being, of course, esports, but traditionally an awful lot of Olympic work. We've got upcoming Summer Olympics. Well, of course, 2020 has now moved to 2021 in Japan, followed by Paris in 24. And then we should be prepared to see an awful lot of activity in 2026, 27, and 28 leading up to the Olympics in Los Angeles. Marquee events, so many of you are with us and have attended everything in our marketplace from WrestleMania to the MLS All-Star Game last summer, Monster Jam World Finals. Of course, we have Special Olympics coming, their U.S. Games in 2022. NCAA, we've hosted March Madness a number of times, obviously golf and tennis. We do a lot of business with the NCAA, whether it's national championships, of course, so many conference championships. And then our largest category, and I'm going to talk more about this later, our largest category, as we certainly service major facilities around the region, you know, Boomba Stadium in Seminole County and Austin Tyndall and in Osceola, and of course the Mike Stone Complex in Lake County, a tremendous amount of youth and amateur events. Moving on, I wanted to give you all an update on World Cup. This was a photo from the MLS All-Star Game last summer, joined by Governor DeSantis, joined both our mayors, and to the right, that's Don Garber, who's the commissioner of MLS. But wanted to give you a quick update on our progress with World Cup. Obviously, we are in a little bit of a we've pushed pause. So a couple of things that were discussed in a very recent CFHLA board meeting when I spoke. Wanted to give you an update. So stadium declarations for World Cup. So essentially, any upgrades to your stadium or any changes to your stadium had to be shared with the folks from FIFA by April 30th. That deadline has been pushed back to October 31st. We were set to go with Mayor Dyer to Dallas. The 27, let me switch the screens here, the 27 pursuit cities in the United States were set to go to Dallas on March 16th. Of course, on March 9th, that meeting was canceled. They did have their meetings in Mexico and Canada. There was a meeting on the 8th of March and on the 12th of March. And then the folks from Zurich that lead FIFA had to return back home and were not able to conduct a meeting with the US markets on March 16th. We were expecting to have site visits in May through October. They were talking about having 2 site visits here in Orlando. So those are, of course, on hold. And in the meantime, the good news is we do have our 4 training site locations selected. We have started to have some conversations with hotels as we look to host the first set of hotel blocks that we worked on is specifically for the FIFA team, the folks that would come in and be part of the umbrella group. We have not had any conversations, which is a question that we get quite often. We have not had any conversations, of course, as it relates to where fans would stay and all of those. You know, if you're talking about 300,000 to 350,000 fans descending upon Orlando in 2026, they will not, they've told us they're not going to get into those conversations until they do the selection of the host cities. So wanted to make sure I gave you an update there. Along with this opportunity for World Cup, we've already started to see the next sets of opportunities related to World Cup. So we are currently waiting to get in front of the Sports Incentive Committee in Orange County to put a bid forward for qualifying events for the 2022 Qatar World Cup. We are discussing Gold Cup 21, and then of course you would have test matches in 25 and qualifying in 25 and 26. So those are the additional opportunities that will come available as we get closer and closer to World Cup 2026. If I could transition here, I want to share an update on where we are as it relates to COVID. Of course, all of our worlds turned upside down when in our organization, we decided on March 9th, then again on the 12th, to definitely have our staff work from home starting on March 16th. The transition for us internally was one of, it took us 2 to 3 weeks to basically take apart 2 to 3 years worth of work. And there were a number, and I'll get to this a little bit later in my presentation, but all of our event folks had to basically wrap up and cancel a number of events that were on the books to take place in March through June. And those folks then transitioned to become business development, to our business development team. And our team has been working hard. I'm going to share quite a bit on our business development efforts over the last 9 weeks. So with that, some of the messaging that we wanted to get across, and we released this video on Wednesday. I hope you've all had a chance to see it, but just a status update on our organization and events in our marketplace. So we released the video on Wednesday, along with what we have as a revised game plan. We usually do our report to the committee, the report to the community annually. And in this particular case, we thought it was important to go back to the community at the halfway point of our fiscal year, which is the same as all of our government partners, and give a new update to show what we've been doing and where we stand as a community. We've been putting typically our newsletter would go out. Now we're up to 2 times a week, sharing resources, stories within the sports world, talking about our sports ecosystem here locally. And we've had a tremendous response to those. And I would encourage all of you, if you have things that you'd like us to share with the community, our numbers, our registration numbers, and our subscription numbers have gone through the roof as we continue to send these newsletters out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Just some of the feedback that we've gotten from the community on our newsletters. The other thing that I think that is a strength of our organization is our ability to connect our stakeholders with our partners in the community. And we're really proud that so many of the folks that are either corporate partners, members of our organization, we're able to get out into the community and help. The folks at Puff and Stuff donating 800 table linens, which were turned into thousands of masks. Red Bull donations all across Orlando. 3 and 2, which is one of our apparel manufacturers, was able to donate masks. So it was great that we were able to connect some of those dots. And I would also share and thank so many on this call today. So many of our hoteliers, whether it was John McGavin or Jesse Martinez or Justin Williams, or a number of our board members and partners who helped us put together a Thank You Orlando video. When Mayor Dyer asked that we share the hashtag Thank You Orlando, we thought we'd take it a step further, and we were really pleased that so many celebrities in our community, whether it was pro golfers or Markel Fultz and the team over at the Magic and the folks at City Soccer. I mean, there's so many. I mean, probably over 40 different stakeholders came to us and had videos. So we shared that. And I was really excited to learn that Advent Health shared it with all 34,000 of their employees. And I know that Orlando Health pushed it out as well. An opportunity for us to thank so many people on the front line, especially early on when we, the curve was going up and we had no idea of what the future would hold. So we're so thankful for so many of those people that were able to participate and help us get this video out. The transition for us during COVID has been one of being able to collaborate, being able to share best practices, being able to share processes and procedures and policies. The good news is that, you know, within our organization, our tentacles reach certainly within the state and regionally, but also nationally and internationally. When you talk about the USTA, the LPGA, the PGA, those folks are already working in Asia. They're probably, you know, anywhere from 4 to 6 to 8 weeks ahead of us. They were able to share with our local community some of the things that were happening in Asia and Europe as restrictions started to be lifted. We wanted to have that group continually be updated. So just some screenshots. These are our stakeholder meetings, which is a number of our venues and teams that come together to share ideas and best practices. This is our esports group that was able to get together and continue to push. Mike Waterman doing such a great job at Visit Orlando. So many folks here, OEP, Sheena Fowler. I mean, there's a lot of folks involved in our esports group to help us push the envelope and promote Orlando as a destination for future esports events. We have 3 major opportunities that we're bidding on right now. One of those I'm confident we're going to bring to Orlando, and hopefully the other 2 as well. And then every Friday we bring together our group, our local group of arena, stadium, ballpark leaders, stakeholders, to come together to, again, talk about best practices. We've had a number of terrific guest speakers to talk on everything from health clubs to, you know, a healthy way to return back to playing sports. Alan Johnson came to us when he was named to Mayor Deming's task force and said, would you help lead this behind the scenes? And we've had great success bringing everybody together to share those best practices. And we have another meeting again today at 1 o'clock. And I think that our role as an aggregator to be able to bring together, you know, a great example, Bundesliga, the German soccer league, started play, I want to say about a weekend ago. And they shared all of their materials, all of their guidelines and procedures, their entire packet of information. We just had to translate it from German, but these are this is a little bit of a snapshot on the screen of so many of the guidelines and articles that we're sifting through and aggregating to bring together what we hope will be a unified approach to returning safely to not only professional sports, but collegiate and amateur sports as well. The Aspen Institute, if you haven't taken a look at it, if you have kids that play youth sports, the Aspen Institute has been a leader in this area and has done tremendous research and a great amount of work in this area. And I'm going to share some of those details at the end of my presentation. Moving along, I also wanted to share that our team, led by Jen Lastic, has also played a vital role in starting up our Women in Sports and Events community called WISE. There's a chapter here in Orlando. If there are women in the audience that would like more information and they'd like to participate, they have a series that they've rolled out here in May, the beginning of June, to their membership. And I know from what Jen's told me that even in their first meetings, Sharon Line Clary, Jackie Hayter, folks from the Magic and City Soccer on that committee, that executive committee, that they have done a great job building their membership. And I think they're up over 100 individuals that are participating in that group as well. So we're proud to support that organization. Recent events to kind of roll this thing forward. Just a little bit of a snapshot of some of the events that we were active and participated in. And that takes us to our COVID report. So we were able to complete 19 events with an economic impact of just over $120 million and a return on investment, which is really important. We value our relationship with all of our funding partners. We have the 4 counties that we work with for funding. the state that we work with for funding in the city of Orlando. And I'm proud to say that the return on the dollar for every dollar spent in those first 19 events, we were able to deliver 144 times that investment. So we're certainly proud of that. Going into March, we had 6 events that we were able to complete. We were thankful that right under the wire, just before the April 2nd executive order from Governor DeSantis, WrestleMania, who had originally been slated to have their event in Tampa, moved all of their operations to Orlando, was able to tape what I understand is just under the wire. They finished taping WrestleMania, which aired on that Saturday and Sunday thereafter. The executive order came into effect that Thursday night, so we were proud to support those folks. But unfortunately, we had 13 events canceled and not rescheduled. The good news, a little bit there of a silver lining, is 2 of those 13 extended their agreements with us. They had multi-year agreements, so they added a year on to the end. 2 of the events were partially completed, and 7 of the events were postponed. We're hopeful that some of those events, the majority of those events, will come back in 21 or 22. So we feel, really good about all of that. If I could switch slides here, I wanted to share a little bit about the market conditions that we're experiencing with the group. These should not be specific to sports. I would imagine that Jesse Martinez was coaching me through. I took a certificate class with FAU, and we were bouncing back, all kinds of concepts as it relates to hotels and our theme parks, and so many of us in tourism. And a lot of this conversation, I would imagine, matches up with what everybody on this call is experiencing. But, of course, many of our youth and travel teams and leagues and association are struggling right now. There's an $8 billion ask of the federal government to support those entities, and we'll see how that comes to be under the CARES Act. But we're hearing from those folks, we're communicating with them. And as it relates, it's interesting, while travel sports have been recession-proof in the past, local youth sports, which is the feeder system into that travel, is struggling at what could be a really devastating pace. And what I wanted to share with you in this is that, we hope to take a lead in this area with so much good information that's out there. But, it's interesting, when it comes to youth sports, K to 12, the average child will only participate in youth sports now for a length of 3 years, which is remarkable because you would think it would be a little bit longer than that. Organized youth sports, 3 years. If we're going to wipe out 6 months to a year's worth of that opportunity for so many children between the ages of 6, 12, 14, then we're going to see maybe a ripple effect in the future, maybe not, but it's something that we're keeping an eye on. And I think the other thing that's really, it's wonderful that we have so much great support with our school systems, because when we have Doug Patterson in front of us, who's the athletic director for Orange County, from March 16th, which was the start of the last day of class was March 13th for Orange County, until August 10th, which is the expected potential either return to school or at least the return to virtual learning. That's a 5-month period that our youth in our community have not had a single physical education class, no PE for 5 months. And, that's of concern because societally that leads to obesity. I mean, I've got the stats in front of me. The United States of America has the highest rate of youth obesity among 15 peer countries. 40% of females and 35% of males, school-age children, are obese. So certainly obesity, without organized sports, the opportunity to get in trouble, certainly anxiety and mental health will suffer. So we're keeping an eye on that. And there's also that societal conversation about, how low-income communities, become further marginalized, of course, with the creation and the expense of a pay-to-play model in our travel sport industry. So the more opportunity there is for kids to play, the more opportunity to feed this travel youth sports platform. And it's something that's important. We can't have one without the other. And we're keeping a close eye on that. Of course, collegiate winter and spring sports potentially could be affected. We had cancellations in mid-season of winter sports. We all know that March Madness started for about 2 seconds with conference play, and then it was halted. And of course, the majority of the spring collegiate sports did not happen. And of course, all major professional sports have had their seasons interrupted. Rich and I talked before this meeting, and of course, there's a lot of rumor about soccer, baseball, and basketball coming to Orlando. We have had conversations with a couple of other leagues about opportunities in our community, and we're so happy and thankful that we have a great partner in Visit Orlando that helps us with those hotel leads and site selection and venue selection. So we're working hard to see some of that to fruition. So hopefully we'll have some good news for all of you in the near future. And of course, as I mentioned before, the 2020 Summer Olympics postponed to 2021. The interesting thing there is you have a really sensitive period of time for an Olympic athlete. And when you qualify for the marathon, for instance, which was in Atlanta this year from on February 29th with the leap year, on February 29th, those marathon runners qualified for this year's Summer Olympics. And the question still remains, will they have to re-qualify for next year's Summer Games, or will those times stand up? When you extrapolate that over the 50 national governing bodies that exist within the Olympic Committee movement out in Colorado Springs and so many other markets, the question still remains, will there be additional qualifying opportunities? And of course, Orlando, with our governor's promotion of our marketplaces, they're looking to Orlando potentially to see where we could fit in some of that business. So we're working on that as well. I really want to praise and thank George Agell, Visit Orlando, Rich, so many people in our tourism community, because there's no doubt that when the time comes, and as we saw most recently, I think, last night with Mayor Deming signing off on letters to reopen so many of our theme parks and attractions, the leadership there and the conversation about safely returning, but campaigns that promote Orlando as a destination that we're reopening, and so much of that language is going to be vital to the sports industry, because what it's doing is it's sending a cohesive message. When we're talking to event organizers, the feedback we're getting from those event organizers is the things that are resonating for Florida: safe, everybody's on the same page. The hoteliers are working in lockstep with theme parks. They're working in lockstep with the airport. And we're getting a sense of confidence as it relates to coming to Florida. And I have one specific client that we're working with right now who's looking to move their entire league's season here, who has said just that. They've said, look, when we looked at Marketplace A, we're concerned about where the governor is on a couple of issues. When we've looked at Marketplace B, we're concerned with the governor and the county executives not being in lockstep and not agreeing with each other. And I think that the one thing that they're getting message-wise from Mayor Demings, Mayor Dyer, our commissioners in our surrounding counties, the folks in tourism, is that it's a unified collaborative effort. And that is giving them a lot of comfort as they're looking to make some decisions leading into July and August and September. So kudos to all of those folks. George and Tim Giuliani, of course, leading the task force on behalf of Mayor Demings. All of that is playing a vital role. It's resonating, and we're hearing back from event organizers that they feel really good. Their memberships, it's really interesting with AAU and their decision to come. I want to also share with you all that Brevard County this weekend is going to host 70 USSSA baseball teams, which to my knowledge is going to be one of the first big Florida youth sports events that's going to take place. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out. if I can change slides here, here's sort of our, economic report back to all of you, which is, I've shared some of the market conditions and indicators, and obviously we're having a lot of conversations with our peers around the country to kind of glean as much information as we can. Our team is working very hard to make sure that we're part of the recovery solution for this community. I will happily share with you that we have that 12 is actually turned into 13. We have 13 new events committed, an economic impact of over 72 million. You can add 10 million more to that because we very recently, within the last 48 hours, received word that we are going to be rewarded with a $10 million, 10,000 hotel room event for the convention center in 22. I'm not at liberty to share, as the organizer likes to announce their sites 1 year in advance, so we're a little bit ahead of the curve there. But I'm very proud of our team, Brent Nelson and our group, that was able to secure those 13 events for the immediate future. We have 48 bids out for future events. World Cup, of course, we touched on. I want to share this photo with you. On February 6th, we brought all of our funding partners together for our announcement for the NCAAs that we were bidding on 68 NCAA events in 10 different sports that would come to our region. Of course, Mayor Dyer, Mayor Demings, Commissioners Campione and Constantine and Hawkins were with us for that announcement of the NCAA business that we bid on. A good update there. Originally, the notice was going to go out to the host cities on October 20th or 21st. They've moved that date back, up. They've moved the date up to October 14th. So on October 14th, we expect to learn how many of those NCAA championships we're going to be able to bring to our community. And in addition to all of that, we have 48 prospects that we are bidding on. I touched on, we're going to be going in front of the SIC to bid on a qualifying match for the 2022 World Cup here in the near future. So roughly 140 plus bids in our system right now, with an impact of about $1.2 billion worth of business to our community. So I think, Rich, I hope I've done all of that justice and shared the information that you were hoping to hear about. And I am most certainly happy to answer any questions. I'm sure there's some things that I could think about that maybe I missed, but hopefully I've covered so much of it and given you all a sense of where we're headed as we move forward. This is a great place to find all of our information at greaterorlandosports.com. Certainly, if you're not following us, we would encourage you to follow us on those 4 social media platforms. And most, if not all, of the sales directors in our community, from our good friends at Hilton, Paul Bierns, and so many folks there across the board, all of the sales associates that Brent continually works with on a weekly and monthly basis. But Brent Nelson is our head of business development, is the person that your folks should be interacting with as it relates to these opportunities. I'm going to end the share of my screen, Rich and Aaron, and like I said, I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you, Jason. We do have several questions that have come through, so I will start with the first one, and this is going to be relating to the World Cup. So if the concern is the available funds or the lack of available funds for necessary improvements to the venue, being Camping World Stadium, as Orlando is being considered as a host city, given that other communities are in similar situations due to the global impacts of COVID-19, would the World Cup decision makers likely make concessions and amend some of the previous requirements for improvements?
So the information that we've received back, of course, I mentioned that they're going to push the deadline back to October for our stadium declaration. As we all know, there was a commitment from Orange County of $60 million to additional upgrades, renovations, and changes to Camping World My understanding is much like the convention center funding that was approved, my understanding is that that is still in place. In addition to that, I do know that it will most likely be expected that we would make the changes to the field dimensions as it relates to the required dimensions for the pitch itself. So I do think that those requirements will be in play. To answer the question even more directly, there's no question that our organization, there's no question that all of the cities that are in play for the United States, the 17 potential host cities, in a competitive environment, we did understand, and there were articles to such and some things that were leaked. There's no question about it that Kansas City, Denver, Miami, a number of organizations were preparing to make additional changes to their venues, only because of it being a competitive environment. And we are no different. We had some preliminary conversations and some drawings made up and items that we shared during CFHLA board meetings to put ourselves in the best position to move forward and hopefully secure World Cup for 26. But I would say that with so many of the new potential requirements as it relates to COVID and safety measures, I think that those are going to become the priority. I would imagine, we're looking at it as, let's make sure that we understand exactly where we're headed locally with our community as it relates to safety measures, because that's the new layer of conversation that we have to be prepared to answer is, how are you going to do this in a safe manner? Obviously, the event is only, it's 6 years away. Time will tell what changes will have to be made as it relates to the venue upgrade. So we're all in the same boat. There's no question that all 17 U.S. cities will have to take those health standards into consideration. And I think that, again, I'm so bullish on our community. I know what we bring to the table. I know that our community was our city was the only city in that group that had a perfect score when it came to accommodations and the way that our ability to host. So I feel great there, and I hope that wherever we land when we submit our declaration in October is going to be the winning, certainly the winning formula, and I hope that answered the question from whoever submitted that.
Thanks, Jason. Next question we have, with the rumors flying around about Orlando potentially playing host to both the NBA and MLS for the resuming of their seasons in the weeks ahead, what does that say about the years of community focus and investment in sports tourism? And then second part to that, and what opportunities or door openings do you see it creating for the region in the future?
Well, I think, like I mentioned in my conversation, the perception that's been created by the leadership in this community and this state has certainly weighed heavily on these organizations' decisions as they were shopping for places to play. There's no question about that. I've got a number of friends, and this, I will try to say that this is off the record. I know this is, this is on the record, but I've had executives in other sports who have said, "Gosh, it's too bad Orlando doesn't have a bunch of hockey rinks too, or else maybe we'd be talking about an additional league that is looking for a place to play." But in addition, like I mentioned, in addition to the rumored leagues that are out there looking for those opportunities and places to finish their seasons, there are a number of others that are in the middle of looking, and we're in some conversation with those as well. What it says that everything we knew about our community still stands, which is a collaborative environment. We have two mayors that work in lockstep. We have a tourism community second to none. We have a supporting group that collaborates and comes together to put a perception out there, which is the obvious one that, hopefully all of these rumors come to fruition and we are hosting these folks in a safe environment, because not only will it open the door for, this emergency scenario, but it most certainly will open, if you haven't had an experience. So if you haven't had an experience as a league or an entity or an international association, when we talk about bringing friendly World Cup games here, if you haven't had a relationship with Farron Kelly and the folks at Wide World of Sports, and you see the way that those folks take care of their people, if you hadn't had a relationship with the folks at the Omni and Champions Gate or Reunion or so many of our great properties, Ritz-Carlton, the list goes on and on and on. All of our hoteliers that do such a wonderful job, that indelible impression that's left is the reason that we're going to have the success and why we've garnered so much attention.
And have you heard anything on timeline for any decisions on that?
No. Nope. Reading along. I think there's a couple people in this town that have the answer, and my sense is we'll read about it before we hear about it directly from those folks.
Thank you. Next question we have, do you know yet when Orlando City soccer games or the NBA Orlando Magic games will resume?
I don't.
Okay. And then last question we have, and again, if anybody else has a question for Jason, please type it into that chat box and we'll make sure he addresses it. But the last one I have for now is the 2022 Special Olympics is already a done deal, correct?
Yes. We, with the support of CFHLA, with the support of Orange County, we were able to, I'm going to say it was 2000, it was the first Sports Incentive Committee meeting. It was an emergency meeting, I want to say March of 18, where the Incentive Committee recommended to the Board of County Commissioners funding to jumpstart the bid process for our local Special Olympics 22 entity. It was approved by the Board of County Commissioners. They were able to raise the additional dollars they needed. They had to get that bid in by, I think it was May of that same calendar year. And the Orlando was awarded the event and will host, I'm hearing from my folks, Joe Zaluk and Amy Wise at Special Olympics, that they've been able to raise enough money to support additional sports, which is wonderful. It's kind of a little bit like a scholarship program. The more money they raise, the more Special Olympians that can participate. So I know they're hopeful of having in the neighborhood of 4,000 to 4,500 Olympians come to town, along with their support staffs and their family members. It should be a wonderful, this will be one of the largest humanitarian efforts in the state of Florida, the history of the state of Florida. And I know that we're still site selecting as it relates to where most of those events will be hosted. But I know they're pretty far along in that process. And the date pattern, I believe, is early June. I want to say June of 22. I don't know I think they added on a day or two to the event, which is great because that's more hotel rooms, and because they added on sports. So we're still working on opening ceremonies, closing ceremonies, and like I said, Joe and his team have done a fabulous job, and I know they're going to need community support as it relates to volunteers and welcoming committees and host committee activity as we get closer and closer. I know there's still fundraising because, like I said, the more opportunity, the better. And the really great, being selfish about it, the great thing there is that the state of Florida will be so well represented because the athletes have to get to Orlando before that sort of subsidy kicks in. So they have to pay their way to get to the location, which means that everybody that's in Florida that's within a drive of Orlando, those athletes are going to have an opportunity to participate in those games because Special Olympics picks up the tab the moment they get to Orlando.
Great. Well, those are all the questions I have in the chat at this time. Rich, would you like to offer any closing remarks today?
Yes, Jason, Siegel, thank you very much on behalf of the 60, 70 CFHLA predominantly lodging members that have joined us today. An excellent report. It reinforces my opening comments that you are truly one of our sports tourism gurus. So thank you for the time, particularly at this stage with so many things up in the air. And I know you and your team are working diligently. I would also want to say most of you are very active CFHLA board members that Jason hasn't stolen yet. But I want to remind all of you that we do have a CFHLA board meeting, a Zoom board meeting this Tuesday, and we have excellent attendance, something like 45 of the 50 registered board members. So with that, I hope most of you, if not all of you, get a 3-day weekend. I want to remind you to fly the flag. I put my flags out this morning on my front lawn, and I actually have the duty. I'm on the HOA board. My duty every patriotic holiday is to put our American flags out at our gate entrance for our neighborhood. So I hope you remember to honor those that have perished, to keep our freedoms where they are today. Jason, thank you. You and your team. Aaron, you did a great job serving as our moderator and organizing. And thank you all. Have a good weekend.